Hi, this is Joe Rabil from Rabil Stock Research with your Daily 5. So the market action's starting to broaden out somewhat. I wanted to highlight 5 stocks showing bullish characteristics and go through the reasons why I find them attractive. So let's go ahead and get going with our 5. And one of the things I did want to point out is there's a specific thing that I try and find, especially when I'm looking at a monthly chart, which is in the bottom left, and a weekly chart in the bottom right. And it's the combination I'm looking for is related to ADX. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to use ADX to highlight something that has a pretty good chance of igniting a new trend. So if we start with the monthly chart of Iron Mountain, we've made this really strong move to the upside, confirmed by MACD, but also confirmed by the ADX to the upside. Now, ADX is an overbought, oversold oscillator, just like MACD. When MACD gets stretched away from the zero line, we know we want to look for some kind of a pullback or pause. And if you notice what happened, we got about 3 or 4 months to the downside, and then it found support at the 18-month line, and it has support from a rising 40. So we know we've got a pretty good trend on this time frame. And because this was somewhat of a violent pullback, it's taken a little bit of while for this to consolidate and really kind of work off the overbought condition or digest this big move that it made. And the other thing I did want to point out is that while the price has been making higher bottoms from this point, the MACD is actually making slightly lower lows through this period. And I like to see that. It's somewhat like a reverse divergence pattern. Now, on the higher time frame, we've got strong ADX. And on the lower time frame weekly, we have low ADX. All right, this combination is something really to be on the lookout for, because we know we have a really strong trend on the higher time frame that's working off the overbought condition, and on the lower time frame we have this low ADX condition where we've worked sideways and quiet. So when I see this, I'm looking for a breakout on the weekly chart. I want to see this breakout really above like 57, 57 and a half, something like that. I think if we get that, this could be a really intriguing pattern, because essentially what you're doing is you're igniting the next leg in the monthly chart. We know we've got good momentum. We know we don't have momentum here, so we're looking for something to kick it into gear. Let's go ahead and move on to the next stock, DXCM. Now, this is a little bit different. This is it has a low ADX condition on the monthly. It also has sort of a low ADX condition on the weekly and a low ADX condition on the daily. So when I see that, I want to buy a breakout. You draw trend lines on price and look to buy a breakout. And that's essentially what's taking place here on the weekly chart. Now, I view this as a weekly trade that can be managed off the daily. If I go back and look at IRM, it's a monthly trade managed off the weekly. It's a monthly trend that's igniting again on IRM, and the weekly is helping you manage and enter and all that. I don't view this as a trend on this time frame. We've got a declining 18-month. It just doesn't look to me like something that's getting ready to start something significant. But I think there could be a pretty good trading move, especially when you look at what's taking place on the weekly chart. So I would view this more as a trading play, but something that looks pretty interesting, especially if it comes back and tests this breakout area. But I think you can buy the breakout because this is not an overbought condition on this time frame. MACD has been skating along the zero line, above the zero line, so overall pretty interesting pattern. The next chart is HMY. And we've talked about gold here showing signs of improvement, but let's look at what's going on the monthly chart. So we've broken this downtrend line on the monthly. All right, we made a lower high, lower low. Green DI is starting to kick into gear, and MACD is starting to cross back above the zero line. All right, so that on the monthly chart, we're showing signs of improvement. Now, on a weekly, we made a very strong move to the upside, and then we get a pullback. And again, we've got really good momentum here. And then we have a low ADX pattern developing on the daily chart. So if you think about what I was showing on IRM, strong ADX on the monthly and low ADX on the weekly, this is basically one time frame down. Strong ADX on the weekly and low ADX on the daily. So we go to our opposing trend pattern. This is obviously from my book and course. If we get a setup in this based on the MACD overrun, we're looking for a little bit of a move and then some kind of a higher pivot low to develop. And I think if that does develop, this could be really intriguing. And I think you could play this in any time frames that you want, because the quarterly chart is showing a reversal here, which is being helped now by this opposing trend pattern on the monthly. So really you could look at this as a mega trend, big move starting, or you could look at it as a an intermediate term trading move. Okay, look at COOP. So this is categorized in financial and banks. Okay, if you go and look at what's going on in the banking area, there's been a lot of down moves, really ugly price action, but we're coming into support in some of these banks. It looks to me like they're finally going to stop going down, actually starting to see some signs of improvement in some of the areas in financials. So I want to go and look for the stocks that really held up like champs. No one really wanted to sell them. And let's go back to this monthly pattern. And again, look at the strength to the upside, reminiscent of what we just talked about in the IRM. Strong confirmation here, very strong confirmation in the ADX. And then we've been working sideways while this works off the overbought condition. And again, this is making higher bottoms while this is making lower bottoms. So we get this reverse divergence developing on the monthly chart, and now we're starting to emerge out of a low ADX condition. You see how this has been low since July, and now we're breaking out of this pattern. I'm also a huge fan when we get this big red bars like this. You see this giant red bar? It's the biggest red bar on the entire chart, all right? Notice how it had a little bit of follow through. It kind of undercut this low, and then immediately we're getting right back above that. It's not spending much time to get itself back through this resistance area. I view that as a real bullish sign that you shook some people out, and now it's reversing back to the upside. So this looks good here. I'd love to see a little minor pullback, but really, the overall pattern is attractive. And again, we're going back to our ADX, strong on the higher time frame, low on the lower time frame, lower being the weekly, higher time frame being the monthly. You can always go to your daily chart and wait for this to break out. When this is low on the weekly, you can always wait for this to break out and then look to play a pullback. So let it break out, let the ADX get back above 25, and then buy the first pullback. There's nothing wrong with doing that when you have a low ADX condition on the weekly chart. Okay, last chart here is Squarespace, another tech stock showing signs of improvement. And let's just focus in on the weekly chart, because see how this has been trending down, and then we worked sideways for a period. We actually went through a low ADX pattern. We had strong ADX, but that was based on the sellers. You see how red was on top? And now we're emerging out of this based on the buyers. And look at the volume pattern. Strong move to the upside. Now, we had some selling volume here. I want to show you something. Look at the daily chart. Look at the violence of this decline with the gap and everything. Notice how we're overcoming that. Just like I was just talking about, we didn't really have any follow through to the downside. We're making higher highs and higher lows, and now we're getting back through that line. So I view that as a very bullish sign. And one other point I want to make, I'm actually going to do a lesson on Thursday on my Stock Talk show on RSI and how it can help you anticipate and help you complement what you're doing with the MACD and ADX. Notice how this is the first time that we've gotten a swing pattern where we came down and moved up, where RSI 20 stayed above 50 and this one went below. So when I see that pattern, especially in something that's sweeping and cupping around, it definitely piques my interest. You notice how the RSI 20, the red line, has been below 50 this whole time, and now this is the first time we're basically making a higher pivot low above the 50 level. So something to be on the lookout for. I am going to talk about more of that on Thursday. I hope you enjoyed this segment. You can contact me through LinkedIn, Twitter, or find my research on rabilstockresearch.com. In addition, if you'd like to learn more about trend, MACD, and ADX in multiple timeframes, I have a trend and momentum course, which can be found on rabilstockresearch.com/services, and it delves into this subject. Have a great trading day, and we'll see you next time.